Across the endless stretch of stars, a quiet peace had settled over the galaxy, a fragile balance that had taken centuries of treaties, secret deals, and bloodshed to build. In the heart of this vast, glittering domain, the galactic monitoring stations floated silently, recording every flicker, every whisper of movement across hundreds of worlds. For decades, they had only detected minor anomalies, rogue asteroids, smugglers sneaking through trade lanes, the usual ripples of life in a complicated galaxy. But on that day, when the alarms started to wail across every station at once, the universe itself seemed to shudder. Unmarked, enormous, and ancient beyond measure, an object had torn through the boundary of neutral space without warning. The monitoring systems tried to classify it, but the data made no sense. It was human, but at the same time, it was something far beyond anything humans were supposed to have built. Across the control rooms of dozens of alien races, commanders leaned forward, eyes narrowing, breath catching in their throats as they realized what they were looking at. It was a warship, massive and terrifying, covered in armor that seemed to hum with dormant energy. It bore no flags, no diplomatic symbols, no identifications. It was like a ghost from a forgotten war, and it was moving slowly but deliberately toward the heavily populated core worlds. In a matter of minutes, emergency beacons lit up every major power, from the ancient Exilthari Empire to the cautious Vryn Cooperative. They all demanded the same impossible answers. How had a human warship crossed forbidden space? Why was it here now, after so many quiet decades? And most importantly, was it hostile? Within hours, fleets were scrambled, diplomats rushed to emergency meetings, and old enemies found themselves speaking urgently across once silent channels. No one trusted the humans, even though humanity had kept mostly to itself on the far edge of the galaxy. Their reputation, built long ago during the first expansion wars, spoke of stubbornness, creativity, and a terrifying ability to survive and adapt against impossible odds. When the humans had withdrawn from galactic affairs centuries ago, many had secretly breathed easier. Humanity, though small compared to the great empires, had always been seen as a dangerous unknown. And now, somehow, a piece of their lost history had surfaced again, drifting slowly like a loaded weapon pointed at the heart of civilization itself. Deep in the Council's grand chamber, under the massive silver banners of the United Species, the High Speaker pounded a gavel and demanded order, but panic roamed freely among the gathered ambassadors. Proposals flew wildly. Should they attack immediately? Should they attempt communication? Should they evacuate the nearest colonies? No one could agree, but all could feel the same gnawing fear beneath their arguments. The human ship was not broadcasting distress. It was not sending a greeting. It was simply coming. The ship's design defied all modern logic. Shield generators of an unknown type pulsed around its hull. Weapon arrays larger than city blocks hung silently from its sides. And strangest of all, the energy readings suggested that this vessel was not fully awake, as if it was holding back the full extent of its capabilities. A single question loomed over the minds of every leader, every general, and every citizen glued to emergency broadcasts. If this was just the beginning, what else could be hidden beyond the borders of human space? In the military command centers orbiting the core planets, admirals barked orders to their officers, forming battle lines that stretched like glowing nets between the stars. Warnings were sent to civilian populations, disguised as routine drills to prevent mass panic, but already rumors had begun to spread of human revenants, of ancient wars returning, of monsters in steel shells crossing the void. In one darkened chamber deep inside the defense nexus, a panel of historians and tacticians stared grimly at the old, faded records of humanity's early campaigns. They saw again the way humans had fought with impossible endurance, the way they had turned defeats into victories through sheer unpredictability, the way they had once crippled fleets far larger than their own. The thought of facing even a fragment of that old spirit now, armed with technology no one understood, sent chills down the spines of even the most battle-hardened commanders. Meanwhile, the mysterious human ship continued its steady approach, ignoring all hails, absorbing the attempts to scan it deeper, brushing aside electronic surveillance like a mountain against the wind. The Archangel, as it was later named by terrified observers, seemed to exist halfway between legend and nightmare. A vessel that should not have been, could not have been, yet was undeniably real. Across the galaxy, people gathered around screens, held hands, whispered prayers in 1,000 languages. On distant moons, workers paused their mining drills to stare at the sky. On glittering capital worlds, merchants closed their shops early, sensing the unease thick in the air. Everywhere, an unspoken understanding spread like wildfire. Something ancient and powerful was stirring, something that could not be ignored or explained away. In secret, the Council's special forces prepared last resort measures, while trusted spies were dispatched to infiltrate human space and uncover what else might be waiting. Even the most confident rulers knew the old saying, if one ship had made it through, others could follow. And if the humans were truly returning, the galaxy would never be the same again. In the endless cold of space, where stars flickered like trembling candles, the Archangel moved onward, its destination unknown, its intentions unreadable. And all across the galaxy, from the mightiest empires to the smallest outposts, one truth gripped every mind and every heart. The time of comfort and safety had ended. Humanity had reappeared, and the alarms ringing across the stars were only the beginning of the story. As the human warship Archangel drifted closer toward the heart of the galaxy, its silent presence stirred a panic that spread faster than light across the countless worlds and stations of the major powers. For centuries, the galaxy's empires, federations, and alliances had balanced their ambitions carefully, like masters of a delicate game. Each move weighed against the threat of war. But now, with a human ship from a forgotten era suddenly standing in the open like a giant hammer waiting to fall, the old rivalries were pushed aside by a fear far greater than hatred. Across glittering capitals and deep-shadowed fortresses, leaders called emergency gatherings, secret councils, and desperate meetings. The great empires moved with unusual speed, dropping their pride and ancient grudges to meet under one banner, because all of them understood one thing with perfect clarity. If they failed to act together, there might be no galaxy left to rule at all. On the lush world of Volterra Prime, the shimmering spires of the Vrin Cooperative hosted the first emergency summit, pulling in delegates from across 500 systems. Cold-eyed generals from the Exelfari Empire, sharp-tongued senators from the Luthen Assembly, wise scholars from the Erixian Enclave all gathered in the Grand Hall of Convergence, a vast room of golden light and high curving windows that now trembled slightly under the weight of fear. Cloaked guards watched the doors, scanning every movement as the galaxy's most powerful beings argued behind locked walls. Maps floated in the air, projections showing the steady movement of the Archangel, like a storm cloud moving toward a helpless city. Every attempt to contact the ship had failed. Every drone sent closer had either been disabled or gone dark without a trace. Some among them demanded immediate attack, calling for the combined fleets to strike before the ship could reach any inhabited world, while others warned that an attack could provoke a disaster far greater than letting the ship pass. Old hatreds flared, accusations flew, tempers snapped like brittle glass. But even the loudest voices trembled slightly when they spoke, because none of them could forget the stories, the old human wars, the impossible victories, the rumors of secret weapons, and unbreakable wills. As the debates raged, a second, quieter gathering took place on the hidden world of Senevar, where spies, information brokers, and shadowy agents met in dark halls to trade every scrap of knowledge they could find about humanity's old fleet. Rumors surfaced of sleeper ships, of ancient projects sealed away when humanity withdrew from galactic politics, of alliances once made in the shadows that could be awakened if humanity returned. No one knew if these stories were true, but the fear was enough. Private armies began to move, mercenaries were hired in secret, and old grudges were quietly settled before the real storm could arrive. Across military command stations orbiting the core systems, admirals worked without rest, forming strategies against an enemy they had never faced before. Defensive grids were raised, minefields deployed, carrier fleets recalled from distant assignments. In silent, steel-lined rooms deep beneath the surface of human ship appearing in the heart of the galaxy, armed with technology decades or centuries ahead of anything currently known. The gathering of powers was not limited to the halls of the mighty, on the crowded streets of 1,000 worlds, in the smoky bars of asteroid colonies, in the marketplaces of vast spaceports. The people whispered and wondered and feared. Every passing ship was watched with suspicion. Every shadow seemed to hide human agents. Every rumor of a new fleet gathering near human space grew larger and more terrifying with each telling. Hopeful fools dreamed that the humans had returned to bring freedom from empire rule. Fearful realists warned that humanity would bring only war and ashes. Across every layer of society, from the lowliest miners on the frozen moons to the crowned queens of stellar kingdoms, the same truth gnawed at every heart. Something had shifted, something ancient and powerful had awakened, and no one knew how to stop it. Meanwhile, deep within the warship Archangel, the human commander still unnamed to the galaxy awoke slowly from the long sleep of centuries. Alone, surrounded by the silent echoes of his lost crew, he studied the new galaxy unfolding before him. His ship's AI fed him data streams intercepted from alien communications, and he understood at once that fear had gripped the galaxy tighter than any weapon could. Yet, he did not smile, nor feel pride. He felt only the heavy weight of duty pressing down on him, a duty that he did not fully remember but that he knew must be completed. His orders were simple: seek humanity's rightful place among the stars again. The rest would be decided by the strength of his will and the ship that carried the hopes of a forgotten age. Back in the council halls, as days turned into restless nights, a final decision began to take shape. A fleet the largest assembled since the last Great War would be sent to intercept Archangel. Not to destroy it, at least not yet, but to surround it, to force it to stop, to offer terms before taking more dangerous steps. Even as they planned, the leaders knew that this was a gamble. If Archangel responded with violence, the first battle could cost them thousands of ships, millions of lives. But they also knew that hesitation was a greater enemy now than fear itself. As the final seals were placed on the orders and the fleets moved into position, every soldier, every captain, every politician prayed silently to whatever powers they believed in, hoping that the humans would listen, hoping that peace could somehow be preserved. And as Archangel moved ever closer, ignoring the traps being laid in its path, the galaxy held its breath, teetering on the edge of an abyss it had long thought buried in history. Somewhere in the cold dark between stars, the gathering of powers waited, and the war drums of destiny began to beat louder with every passing second. The fleet stood ready in the empty space beyond the HFY line, a long invisible border where the major powers of the galaxy had decided to make their stand against the unknown threat, and as the human warship Archangel drifted silently closer, a thick tension filled the void, heavier than the gravity of a collapsing star. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species floated in tight formations, their weapons charged and targeting systems locked, shields shimmering faintly like ghostly auras around them, while inside every bridge, every control room, every gunner station, there was a deep silence, a silence of people, holding their breath, knowing they stood on the edge of something ancient and dangerous. No words could capture the feeling that spread across the fleet as the silhouette of the Archangel appeared in visual range, a giant, dark ship unlike anything the galaxy had seen for centuries, its hull sleek and scarred from old battles, its weapon ports hidden but hinted at by strange, sharp lines running across its body, and most disturbing of all, it moved with the calm, steady purpose of something that feared nothing, as if it crossed enemy territory with the same comfort as walking through its own garden. The command ship of the Coalition fleet, the Valor's Reach, opened a communication channel, broadcasting in every known language, offering greetings, a warning, a request to parley, but the Archangel remained silent, its only reply the steady beat of its drive engines humming across the void, and, for long minutes, the two forces simply watched each other, neither making a move, the galaxy holding its breath harder with every second. Then, without warning, the Archangel sent a transmission, a single code burst that none of the translators could understand, but that triggered deep alarms in ancient databases, warnings buried in old human contact files from forgotten wars, and suddenly the leaders realized that Archangel had not ignored them. It had marked them, identified them, measured them. Before panic could break loose, the fleet commanders ordered a containment maneuver. Not an attack, but a massive shifting of ships into a web around the Archangel, tightening space slowly like a noose around a wild beast. But the human ship responded with a speed and precision that no one expected. It made a small, effortless course adjustment that slid it out of the forming trap, moving as if it had seen the whole maneuver before it even began. Across the bridges of the fleet, orders and counter-orders flew. Ships accelerated to block the human vessel. Warning shots were fired across its path. Brilliant lines of plasma and ions streaking through the darkness, but the Archangel did not return fire. It simply danced through the gaps like a shadow, untouchable, moving closer to the core worlds with every breathless moment. Desperation cracked the calm of the admirals, and a final order was given. One squadron would intercept and board the Archangel to force a direct confrontation before the ship reached populated systems, and within minutes, a dozen sleek boarding crafts launched, speeding toward the massive warship, their magnetic clamps and cutting lasers ready. As the crafts approached, the Archangel shifted again, and suddenly strange fields flared around its hull, invisible to the eye but deadly to the delicate systems of the boarders. One by one, the boarding crafts lost power, drifted, or simply disappeared from sensors, not destroyed but neutralized. So completely that even the rescue beacons failed. The message was clear: Archangel would not allow itself to be touched. Even so, the fleet refused to retreat, unwilling to show weakness, and finally, with no other options, a final hail was sent, this time not a warning or threat, but a request for dialogue, an offer to listen, to negotiate anything to prevent a war that could destroy half the galaxy. For a long, terrible minute, there was no reply. Then the Archangel systems responded. "Stand down," the voice said. "This ship has no quarrel with you. Humanity has returned to claim its rightful place. Interference will be treated as an act of war." There was no anger in the voice, no hatred, only the quiet certainty of someone stating a simple fact, and across the fleet, officers and soldiers who had never seen a human now felt the raw power behind their legends, a power that could not be measured by the size of a ship or the count of its guns. Debate erupted among the council members connected to the fleet, desperate arguments about whether to stand down or attack. But before any decision could be reached, the Archangel moved again, accelerating in a burst of speed that bent space around it, slipping through the containment lines like mist through fingers, and within minutes it was gone, leaving behind a stunned, silent armada. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The first encounter with the humans had ended without a single shot being fired by the Archangel, yet it had defeated the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever assembled without even trying. Panic and awe mingled in the hearts of millions as the realization sank deeper. This was not a warship looking for conquest. It was a symbol of a much greater force rising from the shadows of history. As the coalition forces scrambled to regroup and decide their next move, the Archangel disappeared into the deep lanes of space, its course hidden, its purpose unknown. But its message clear: the age of human silence was over, and the galaxy's old powers would soon face a future they could neither predict nor control. Tension spread across the galaxy like a slow-moving fire, invisible but unstoppable, touching every world, every starport, every hidden colony, as the news of the human warship Archangel's unstoppable passage through the Kesvar line reached even the most distant corners of space. And while governments scrambled to maintain order and calm the fears of their people, deep down, everyone knew that a terrible change was coming, a change they could not stop or prepare for. The Council of the Great Powers met again, this time not with the calm arrogance they once carried, but with a growing fear they could not hide. And within the grand hall of the Stellar Assembly, voices rose in anger and desperation, ancient enemies arguing side by side as they tried to find a way to stop the force that moved unseen among them. The humans had not sent a fleet, had not made grand speeches or issued demands. They had sent a single ship, and already it had shaken the balance of power more than any war or rebellion in the last 1,000 years, leaving behind a trail of confusion and silent terror. And now every admiral, every strategist, every intelligence officer was tasked with one impossible mission: find the Archangel and predict its next move before it was too late. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, ships vanished without a trace. Listening posts went silent and strange coded signals flickered across ancient human frequencies that no one outside humanity could properly understand. And with every unexplained disappearance, the fear grew heavier, not just of the Archangel itself, but of what it represented: the return of a civilization that had once fought the galaxy to a standstill before vanishing into myth. Rumors whispered through the streets of the core worlds, stories of human agents appearing in secret, making contact with old allies, waking up long-forgotten weapons hidden in the dark places of the stars, and in the halls of power, leaders who once laughed at the idea of human dominance now looked at every shadow with suspicion, wondering if the humans were already among them, gathering strength. Fleet movements increased. Merchant ships were inspected and detained. Communications were monitored day and night. But still, no one could find where the Archangel had gone or what it was planning, and the uncertainty gnawed at every mind like a slow poison. On the world of Vesser Prime, a secret meeting took place between leaders of rival factions, something that had not happened in centuries, as survival now mattered more than old grudges. And there, in the darkened chamber, surrounded by layers of shields and countermeasures, the leaders tried to piece together a strategy. Some demanded a full mobilization of fleets, calling for a show of force so overwhelming that even humanity would hesitate to challenge them. But others, more cautious, warned that provoking the humans could unleash a war that no one could survive, a war fought not with grand armies but with shadows and ghosts, a war they were not ready for. As arguments flared, a sudden interruption froze the room. A transmission, short and simple but unmistakable, broadcast directly into their secure channel with terrifying precision. "We are watching," the message said. "Choose wisely." There was no signature, no source, no traceable path, but everyone in that room understood at once who had sent it. And in that single moment, the leaders realized that the humans were not just powerful, they were already inside their defenses, already 10 steps ahead. Fear turned into panic as emergency protocols were triggered, but it was too late. The damage was done, trust shattered, alliances strained, and even within their own ranks, suspicions began to grow, each leader wondering if the humans had already turned some of their own against them. Across military command centers, officers issued orders with shaking hands. Ships were pulled back from the edges of space, defenses reinforced. But all the strength of the galaxy now felt hollow compared to the unknown power lurking in the shadows. On the Archangel itself, deep within its black hull, Captain Saren Calder watched the unfolding chaos with a calm, calculating gaze, his crew silent around him, professional to the last, as they executed the next phase of their long-planned operation. They did not need to fire a single shot, Calder knew, because fear was the greatest weapon humanity had ever crafted, and against it, no shield, no fleet, no superweapon could truly defend. He reviewed the next list of targets, small but vital places where a subtle push, a quiet word, or a mysterious disappearance would spread the fear even deeper, fracturing the unity of the great powers before they could unite against him. Humanity had not returned to conquer in the old way. With armies and fleets, they had returned to break the galaxy's will first, to turn its greatest strength, its alliances, its order into weaknesses. As the Archangel prepared to jump again, vanishing into the deep currents of space, Calder allowed himself a rare smile, not of joy, but of grim satisfaction. Across the galaxy, in glittering cities, fortress worlds, and secret bases, rulers and generals watched the skies with growing dread, knowing that somewhere out there, an invisible hand was shaping their future, and despite all their strength, all their pride, they could do nothing to stop it. The tension tightened like a wire pulled to its breaking point, and everyone knew it was only a matter of time before it snapped, unleashing chaos that would change everything forever. In the darkness between stars, the Archangel moved like a ghost, silent, relentless, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Across the galaxy, a strange silence fell, a silence that was not peaceful but heavy, like the moments before a great storm. And in the silence, the new balance of fear began to take shape, built not on treaties or strength, but on uncertainty and dread of the unknown force that humanity had become. And while the great powers of the galaxy once believed themselves unshakable, the sudden reappearance of the Archangel had changed everything. forcing ancient empires, trading leagues, and military alliances to rethink their place in a galaxy that was no longer theirs alone. On the surface, nothing seemed different. Fleets still patrolled, governments still ruled, and trade still flowed between stars, but beneath that normal rhythm, a deep unease grew, invisible but stronger with each passing day, because now every decision, every plan, every movement had to consider one critical question: would the humans allow it? Fear had become the silent judge, deciding outcomes before a single battle was fought, and the rulers who once boasted about their fleets and technologies now whispered in private about sightings of human ships that appeared without warning and vanished without leaving a trace. Even on the worlds that had never seen a human face, the stories spread, told in hushed voices, tales of ships that simply stopped responding, of leaders who changed policies overnight after receiving mysterious visitors, of entire military bases abandoning their positions for reasons no one dared explain. The galaxies powerful began to realize that humanity was not fighting for planets or resources. They were fighting for the mind, the spirit, creating a fear so deep that it became a weapon more dangerous than any missile or battleship, and no one, no matter how rich or powerful, could find a defense against it. In the Stellar Assembly, once a proud beacon of diplomacy, every meeting now carried a tense, brittle air, where once bold ambassadors spoke carefully. Their words weighed not only for politics, but also for survival, because no one wanted to be the next target of humanity's quiet wrath. Conflicts that once would have erupted into wars were now smothered quickly, not out of kindness or mercy, but out of terror that a human warship might appear without warning and pass judgment. Leaders who once laughed at the thought of humans challenging the galaxy now studied ancient Earth history late into the nights, searching desperately for clues, for understanding of the people who had shaped legends and fears centuries ago before vanishing into mystery, and many realized too late that humanity's greatest strength was not its technology or numbers, but its ability to turn weakness into strength, to turn survival into an art form. Somewhere, deep in the neutral zone of space, the Archangel continued its silent campaign, striking not with weapons but with presence, making itself felt even when it remained unseen, and Captain Sarin Calder watched the unfolding transformation of the galaxy with quiet satisfaction, knowing that every fearful meeting, every sudden treaty, every desperate whisper of new alliances was another small victory for humanity. Calder understood that direct war would have united the galaxy against them, but fear divided it, turned friends into rivals, made leaders question each other and hesitate, and in that hesitation, humanity found its advantage. On Vessel Prime, a summit was called, gathering the most powerful rulers in secret, but even as they met in heavily shielded chambers, none could ignore the feeling that human eyes might be watching, that any decision made could trigger consequences they could not control, and so they chose to act cautiously, agreeing not to move against humanity for now, pretending it was part of a grand strategy. But in truth, it was simple fear that kept them in check. Across military academies, new training programs were rushed into place, focusing not only on tactics and firepower, but also on psychology, on how to resist the fear, how to maintain order when facing an enemy who fought not with guns, but with silence and shadows. But even the best instructors knew that no training could fully prepare soldiers for what the humans represented. On trading worlds, guilds and corporations quietly adjusted their policies, offering silent tributes to human-controlled territories, granting favors to human merchants, hoping to buy goodwill before it was too late, and even pirates and mercenaries, once a constant thorn in the side of order, began avoiding routes rumored to be watched by human forces, knowing that even the most ruthless raiders stood no chance against the silent hunters of Earth. It was not a new empire that humanity was building, not yet. It was something far more dangerous, influence, the kind that could not be measured by territory or military strength, but by fear, respect, and the quiet bending of wills without ever needing to raise a hand. In hidden corners of the galaxy, resistance began to stir, small factions who refused to bow to fear, dreaming of fighting back, but their leaders argued bitterly, unable to trust each other, always wondering if one of them was already working with the humans, and this distrust, too, was part of the Archangel's silent war, turning potential threats into scattered, broken enemies before they could unite. As time passed, The galaxy began to change in small but unmistakable ways. Patrol shifted away from human-controlled sectors. Diplomatic treaties suddenly included quiet clauses offering humans access or neutrality. Weapons research increasingly focused on defensive measures rather than aggression. And in every capital, intelligence agencies expanded, pouring resources into trying to understand the new threat while secretly doubting they ever could. Captain Calder, standing at the heart of the Archangel, received reports of these changes with calm detachment, knowing that true victory was not declared with banners or parades, but seen in the slow reshaping of reality itself. And while the galaxy's leaders comforted themselves with the idea that they had chosen a smart path by avoiding conflict, Calder knew the truth they had already lost the moment they chose fear over resistance. In the dark between stars, the Archangel continued to move, not conquering, not destroying, but watching, nudging, shaping a galaxy that was learning a hard and simple truth. When humans returned, they did not ask for permission, they changed the rules, and no one, no matter how mighty, could stop them. The new balance of fear was not written in treaties or announced in great declarations. It lived in the silent glances of generals, in the nervous whispers of rulers, in the shifting of fleets away from unseen dangers, and in the hearts of those who now understood that the humans were no longer a forgotten race. They were the future that had come to reclaim its place among the stars.